Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. Now it's time to put together the tow hook assembly, or at least get it started. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is rummage up the pieces you're going to need. There in two different bags, at least they were in my kit. In my kit, these two black screws were in a different bag. You're going to need those two. You're going to need the two small blind nuts. You're going to need the single large blind nut, the tow hook itself. You're going to need 3 washers and 1 bolt, and then you're going to need these 3 pieces of plywood. And the way this works is this piece of plywood is going to go underneath the aircraft, so I sanded down this edge a little bit just to make it a little more aerodynamic. This will be on the bottom facing up. Okay, then the fuselage will be against this. This doubler makes sure that this blind nut is not going to be in the way. So what you're going to start by doing is taking the blind nut, threading it down onto the tow hook. It really doesn't matter how far down you thread it at first, because you're just seating the blind nut. Put a washer on top, put the bolt on, tighten the bolt down on top, use a small wrench, crescent wrench, pliers, whatever you have, to tighten it down until you have pressed the blind nut into the wood. Okay, then you're going to take this doubler and, sorry, I'm holding the camera in one hand. You're going to put the doubler on like this, so the blind nut isn't against the wood when it gets bolted in place. And then you're going to glue this doubler in place. Then you're going to press these 2 blind nuts in this hole and this hole. Do that after you've glued this together, because you don't want any glue getting into the threads of those 2 blind nuts. Unscrew the bolt and unscrew the tow hook. You're going to want to take a little bit of Loctite and put it on the threads near where this is going to end up. You want to line this up with the plans and screw the blind nut, screw the tow hook into place. Make sure it is lined up straight, and then tighten the bolt down on top of it. Use a little more Loctite there, and when you're done with that, use a pair of diagonal cutters, a cutting wheel, a small hacksaw blade, whatever you have, and trim off the rest of this tow hook. You're never going to be adjusting that again. Then when the time comes to put this into the plane and the fuselage is pretty much done, you're going to basically drop this through the slot in the bottom of the fuselage, and you're going to clamp it in place with this piece of plywood, these 2 screws, and the remaining 2 washers. And that will create the assembly and lock this tow hook in place. The tow hook assembly is finished and trimmed, so this is the final. It's as light as it's going to get without doing something to it which would take away from its strength. It weighs 5.82 grams. And this is the one that I purchased separately, and 5.81. So no negligible difference. One is a little bigger than the other, but it's going to manifest itself about the same size overall on the underside. I'm going to go ahead and use the one that comes with it. I just wanted to go ahead and demonstrate this for you. So even, what would be a nice light over-the-counter tow hook. I'm just going to save this for another kit, and I'm going to go ahead and use this. It's a nice design. It's got a lot of clamping surface, even though this one has some little serrations on it. This is going to clamp on at least as well, and because of the size of it, when this thing clamps down, it's going to provide a little more structural strength to the bottom of the fuselage than this would, because this only has this this one piece here on top that is clamping down. Now, I think that would still work. I don't think that it would tear through the fuselage or anything, but I'm going to go with this. So just so you know, the 0.01, a hundredth of a gram difference. I've decided I'm going to go ahead and use this latch mechanism. The only problem is the amount of balsa material. From the way it looks, I want to mount this on the very bottom of the hatch. The only problem being, because I can't go higher, because then the hatch is going to be plugging into the wing. I could make like a doubler, and but anyway, what I may end up doing is I'm going to have to think about it a little bit. I need to extend the latch a little bit, and so what I may do is take a little piece of brass tubing and cut it to be a little bit longer, glue this tube onto this latch here. It'll barely increase its weight, and just use a little teeny drop of epoxy at the tip with some micro balloons to kind of make a little knob at the end, so that it's easy to pull this thing back. So that's the plan for this. I'll work that out as I go. Like I said, I may just put a doubler on here, and then I can grind or route out a little pocket to put this in, but we'll see. Anyway, onward with the fuselage. So what I need to do now, and this is in step 22, I need to fill the gap that is in the corner here and here, adding some material there so that this can be shaped and rounded. And they say to take this 1/8 triangle stock and to round out the long side, that's this side. So when this is sitting in the corner, we need to remove some material here, make it concave so that it's going to fit up against the boom. And the easiest way it looks like to do that is just going to be to wrap some 400 grit around the boom a little further down, because the sandpaper adds to the diameter, and I want the curvature to be the diameter of the boom here. So I'm probably going to need to go down a ways, and then I can cut this to size. I'm going to need 4 pieces of it all together, and they're going to all need the same curvature. So what I'll do is just go like this, and as you can see, that's going to make a nice little curve in there. It doesn't have to be very long, because it's just trying to get this spot, because it's going to be glued inside here at this corner, and then at the top. So as you can see here, this material rapidly moves away from the boom. So it only needs to be shaped about maybe 1/3 of an inch, maybe just 1/4. And it only needs, they say, about 1 1/8 inches. So it's not even going to go to the bulkhead. It's just enough. I would say it's going to end right here. So regardless of their measurement, I would measure to the doubler, because if you go beyond the doubler, it's not going to mate up. So You know, you're just worrying about shaping the very tip of it. It's not a big aerodynamic penalty one way or another. The main thing is just to keep it from coming apart once you start shaping. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've demonstrated how to do that, and then it just gets glued in with your choice of CA. I would get them into place, maybe use a pin or two to make sure it's up against the wall and flush into the corner, because that's where you really want to make sure of it, that this follows that corner, because when you start shaving away at this piece of balsa and this piece of balsa, you know, at the corner here, you're going to be cutting through that glue joint and going into this. And so this is going to mate to here and fill that space, and this glue joint will, at least down at the tip here, is going to be gone. I hope that explains that. I'll take a picture along the way if I think it's necessary. Otherwise, I'll pick up once I have those glued into place. Okay, as you can see, I've got the excuse me, pieces of triangle shaped wood in here, and you've already seen them in the bottom. So now time has come to add these little brass fittings. They are threaded on the outside as well as on the inside. They act like blind nuts. That would, you know, you could do blind nuts from behind, but that would have had to have been done already before this was glued in place. This is their solution. I don't know why they choose to go with these. It's definitely a good solution. These are good inserts. I guess it's just a preference of design. You know, the blind nut, there wouldn't be any clearance issues if they were behind there, because it's not gonna, wouldn't interfere with the boom. And I don't think that there's any weight variance that would be worth even, you know, discussing. So this is their recommendation. This is what I'm using. The one thing I am doing different is to put these in, they say take one of these wing bolts and you cover this with oil or petroleum jelly as they recommend. And I haven't done that yet, I'm just demonstrating. Okay, and then you screw this on, and the reason that you're putting on that oil, that's a very important step, because you want to apply epoxy. They recommend 5-minute. Because of this may take, you know, a second or two to get screwed in straight, I'm going to go ahead and use 15 just to have a little more time to maneuver. But what you do is you screw this all the way to the top, and then you use the screw to drive this into place. And you're only supposed to have a small amount of it showing. Now, the problem I see is that if you look here, it's going to bottom out before it's gone far enough into the wood. So what I'm going to do is exactly what they recommend, with one exception. I've got a little bolt here, or excuse me, a nut, and it is the right size and threads. And so I'm basically just gonna put a stop in place instead of letting the brass go all the way up to the head of this wing bolt. So I'll probably do it about that far. That way I've also got a little more, you know, something to grab onto to stabilize this as I drive it in, because you want these to go in as straight as possible. This is definitely a critical part here of the build. You don't want these in at an angle. And they recommend that about 1 to 1.5 of these threads still be showing up here out of the top. So about that much needs to still be visible. The rest of it needs to be driven through into the wood. So I can't do this with the camera right here because I'm just going to keep bouncing it and knocking it around. I'm going to go ahead and do it and then show you the outcome. But I've basically told you exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this oil. I'm going to coat this section and the head of the nut. I'll probably, run the nut back down a teeny bit to make sure that this nut isn't getting glued. And then, with clean hands, thread this on. And don't use so much oil that it's going to ooze onto this and, drip over the top onto the threads, because you want to make sure this is glued in place. At the same time, you don't want to glue this to this. So, little tricky. Use your best judgment. Don't put too much oil on it, but make sure you have enough. And I would recommend applying it with a cloth or paper towel or something like that, so that you don't get oil on your fingers, so that you don't have to wash your hands, to then pick this up. Maybe put on a set of gloves, put the oil on, and then pull the glove off, and then put this on with your clean fingers. And then apply the 5-minute epoxy to the brass fitting and then drive it into the wood. Also apply a little bit of glue to the wood itself. But don't put too much. You don't want so much that it's going to catch over the top here. You don't want it getting on the threads, and then as you unscrew this, you're backing, even though it's oiled, you'll be backing that glue up into the brass fitting. So, this is definitely a part that can cause trouble.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel. If you click the bell icon, you'll receive notifications every time I launch a new video. Thank you for watching.